Drake has $0 in savings. Not enough. Zero, a surprise expense just landed, and he has no buffer at all. Here's a real 60-day plan to go from exactly where Drake is right now to a genuine starting emergency fund, not the full 3 to 6 month target yet, but real, meaningful coverage in 2 months. Quick one before we get into this, if practical. Step-by-step plans are useful to you. Hit subscribe, new video every week. The full emergency fund target is 3 to 6 months of expenses. For a median household spending around $5,100 a month, that's $15,300 to $30,600. Nobody builds that in 60 days from zero, and this video isn't going to pretend otherwise. What's actually achievable in 60 days is a starter fund, commonly framed as covering one real specific emergency, like a car repair or a missed paycheck, not the entire multi-month target. That's the honest goal of this plan. Before anything else, Drake needs his own real number, not the median household's $5,100, but his own actual monthly core expenses, since that's what any emergency fund is actually protecting. Before redirecting anything, it helps to see where an average dollar actually goes. Nationally, housing eats up about 33% of the typical household budget. Transportation is next at 17%. Food is around 13%, split roughly evenly between groceries and eating out. Healthcare runs about 8%. Entertainment about 5%. Clothing about 3%. Education about 2%. And everything else fills the remaining 19%. Housing and transportation alone account for more than half of total household spending. That matters here because those two categories are largely fixed in the short term. You're not renegotiating your rent or selling your car in the next 60 days. The realistic redirect room lives in the smaller, more flexible categories: food, entertainment, clothing, and the miscellaneous 19%. The average American household brings in about $104,200 a year before tax and spends about $78,535 of it. Meaning, on average, there's real gap between income and spending nationally. Most people just aren't directing that gap anywhere on purpose. Add up just the flexible categories, food, entertainment, clothing, and the miscellaneous 19%, and together they're about 40% of a typical budget. That's more room than the 30% this plan actually asks you to redirect, which means the 60-day target is asking for less than the flexible room that's already there, not more. There's a real margin between what's flexible and what's being asked for. For 60 days only, the fastest lever is temporarily redirecting the entire 30% wants category from the 50-30-20 rule directly into savings, bringing your total savings rate to 50% of after-tax income for this specific stretch. That 30% redirect assumes the standard 50-30-20 split actually fits your income. It doesn't for everyone. If your needs genuinely run closer to 60% of your income, a 60-20-20 split is the more realistic starting framework, which means your redirect room for these 60 days is the 20% wants category, not 30. Here's what that actually looks like in dollars, using the median household's $5,100 a month from earlier. Under 50-30-20, 30% redirected is about $1,530 a month, roughly $3,060 across 60 days. Under 60-20-20, 20% redirected is about $1,020 a month, roughly $2,040 across the same 60 days. Neither number is nothing. Both are real progress from zero. Both of those numbers map directly onto the goal from earlier in this video, one real, specific emergency, not the full multi-month target. A car repair or a missed paycheck typically falls somewhere in that same range, which is exactly why this plan is built around this stretch of income, not an arbitrary one. The average American spends around $219 a month on subscriptions, but only actively uses an estimated $86 of that, meaning for many people, there's real, immediate money sitting in subscriptions that were never fully canceled after a free trial or an app nobody opens anymore. Do the subtraction, and that's about $133 a month sitting in unused subscriptions alone, call it roughly $266 over a 60-day stretch, before touching a single other category. That's real progress toward the redirect target, and it costs nothing to claim, since it's money you're already not using. For 60 days, switch to zero-based budgeting specifically, every dollar assigned a job, with the emergency fund as the explicit priority job ahead of anything discretionary. This is documented as the most effective approach specifically for people who tend to overspend. Doing zero-based budgeting by hand for 60 days is possible, but two purpose-built tools make it considerably easier. YNAB, You Need a Budget, is built specifically around the EveryDollar has a job method, which makes it a direct fit for exactly this kind of short, high-intensity sprint. EveryDollar, built by Dave Ramsey's team, works on the same zero-based principle, with a free version available and a paid tier that syncs your bank transactions automatically. Either one lets you set up this 60-day sprint as its own temporary budget, without disturbing the categories you use the rest of the year. Zero-based budgeting means every dollar of income gets assigned a job, so that income minus expenses, minus savings, minus investments equals exactly zero. Nothing left unassigned, nothing overspent. It's more restrictive than other budgeting methods, which is exactly why it's documented as the most effective one specifically for people who tend to overspend. That $0 mechanic matters even more on a 60-day sprint than it does the rest of the year. When every dollar already has a job, there's no ambiguity about whether extra money at the end of the week goes to savings or gets spent, because there's no such thing as extra money in this system. On a short, high-intensity sprint where the entire point is the redirect amount, removing that ambiguity is what keeps the plan on track. For the actual transfer amount, a savings goal calculator takes three inputs: your starting balance, which is zero, your target from earlier, and your 60-day time frame, and outputs exactly how much to move each pay period to land on that number by day 60. If the resulting number looks too aggressive once you actually see it, that's useful information, not a failure. It usually means the 30% redirection needs a slightly longer runway, and the calculator will show you exactly how many extra weeks that takes. Two mistakes derail budgeting plans more than any dramatic overspend. The first is not tracking small purchases, coffee, one-off app subscriptions, small charges that individually look harmless but add up fast over 60 days. The second is forgetting irregular, non-monthly expenses entirely: car registration, annual subscriptions, holiday gifts. The costs that don't show up until the month they hit. This is exactly why the buffer matters. A budget without a 5 to 10% miscellaneous category isn't a tight budget. It's a budget that's already wrong the first time something irregular happens, which for most people is well before day 60. This is exactly where the automatic bank sync feature in a tool like EveryDollar's paid tier earns its cost during these 60 days specifically. It catches the small, easy-to-miss purchases in mistake one automatically, instead of relying on you to remember to log every coffee and small charge by hand. The tools from earlier and the mistakes here aren't separate topics. The tools exist specifically to prevent the mistakes. Sized against the median household's $5,100 a month, that buffer works out to somewhere between $255 and $510, small enough to not derail the redirect, large enough to actually absorb something like a car registration bill or a holiday gift list without derailing the entire 60-day plan. Here's how to actually structure it. Weeks 1 and 2, audit every subscription and recurring charge, cancel what isn't earning its cost, and set up the automatic transfer for your redirected 30%, effective immediately. Plug your real target into the savings goal calculator and let the math set the transfer amount, instead of guessing. By the end of week 1, 3 things should already be true. The redirect percentage decided earlier is set as an automatic transfer, the zero-based budget is running inside whichever tool you picked, and the 5 to 10% buffer is already built into that budget, not something added later if you remember. Get those 3 things running in week 1. And the remaining 7 weeks really are just letting the mechanism work. Weeks 3 and 4, this is typically where an irregular expense shows up and tempts you to pause the plan entirely. The fix isn't stopping. It's the same buffer principle from standard budgeting, a small 5 to 10% miscellaneous cushion built into the 60-day plan from day 1. So one surprise cost doesn't derail the whole thing. Weeks 5 through 8, nothing new, the same automatic transfer, continuing exactly as set up in week 1. The plan's entire mechanism is front-loaded, the back half is just letting it run. This money needs one specific home, a high-yield savings account, currently paying somewhere around 4 to 5% a year. Fully liquid and separate from your everyday spending account, not your checking account, where it's one impulse purchase away from disappearing. Not the stock market, where it could genuinely be down the exact month you need it. A dedicated, separate, high-yield savings account, that's the one exception to the earlier videos in this series about investing instead of saving. The reason liquidity matters this much, specifically for a starter emergency fund, comes back to time horizon. This money exists to cover one real, specific emergency that could show up any week, not a goal 10 or 20 years out. A high-yield savings account matches that short time horizon. A retirement account or the stock market doesn't, no matter how good its long-term average return looks. Because the point isn't growth, it's being able to reach the money the exact week you need it. One standing exception applies even during the 60-day sprint. If your employer offers a 401k match, keep capturing that. It's still free money. And skipping it to save slightly faster isn't a good trade. It's worth being honest about why this starter fund matters beyond just the next 60 days. One commonly cited savings benchmark suggests aiming for about 1 times your salary saved by age 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, and 10 times by retirement age. Someone at exactly $0 saved isn't behind on the emergency fund specifically. They're behind on the entire savings habit those benchmarks assume is already running in the background. Put in perspective against income. The 50-30-20 version of this plan, $3,060, works out to about 3% of the average household's $104,200 in pre-tax annual income. 3%, redirected for 2 months, is what it actually takes to go from zero to a real starter fund. That's a much smaller ask than save an emergency fund sounds like when it's phrased as a single vague goal instead of a specific percentage and a specific window. None of the benchmarks on that ladder get built in a single 60-day sprint. But the first rung, going from zero to something, is the one most people never actually climb, and it's the one this specific plan is built to guarantee. The actual value of this 60-day plan isn't just the dollar total it produces, it's that by day 60, the automatic transfer, the zero-based budget, and the habit of not touching a dedicated savings account are all already running. Day 61 is just deciding what the next target is, with the entire mechanism already built. Put the two numbers together, and it's a useful gut check, not a discouraging one. Take the 50-30-20 version of this plan, $3,060 over 60 days, against the 3-month low end of the full target, $15,300, that's about $12,240 still to go after day 60. The same mechanism that produced the first number, the automatic transfer, the zero-based budget, the dedicated account, keeps running to produce the rest. Nothing about the system changes on day 61, only the target does. Redirect the 30% wants category for 60 days, use a budgeting app and a savings goal calculator to set the exact transfer amount. Front-load the audit and setup in week 1, and keep it all in a separate high-yield savings account. Not the full emergency fund, a real, meaningful starter fund built in 2 months from exactly zero, and a habit that carries well past day 60. 3% of income, redirected with intention for 2 months, is what actually turns zero into a real working buffer. Not luck, not a windfall. Just the mechanism running exactly as designed from week 1 through week 8. This video is for educational purposes only and is not personalized financial advice. The 60-day timeframe is a structured plan built from standard budgeting principles, not a guaranteed or universally researched timeline. Your own results will depend on your income and expenses. Next video, we're doing a 7-day reset for anyone stuck living paycheck to paycheck. Subscribe so you don't miss it. New videos every week on the personal finance topics school